Well, greetings, church family. Welcome back to Wednesday Worship Live Bible Study. We're looking today at the last four of the 7 miraculous signs that John used in his gospel to determine and to develop the principle and the apologetic on believing. So we're going to review those, the first 3 just briefly, and then jump into number 4 and see how far we get today. So Pastor Ed and I are on a little bit different screens here today. Maybe you can see us better. Maybe that's not a good thing. But let me see if I can share this screen with you, and let's review quickly. And you see, of course, we're talking about the 7 miraculous signs in the gospel. Here's the chart we're still using. So if you had that from a couple weeks ago, you didn't have to print out new notes for this week. We have done the first 3 of those, and you should have notes on those now. We'll start today in just a few minutes with the feeding of the 5,000, plus just a quick review with the water into wine, John chapter 2, and the miracle there, and how did belief happen? I jumped the screen, didn't I? There it is. The water into wine, the end of the passage says, and his disciples believed. So you see disciples believe in number 1. Then you jump to number 2, the healing of the nobleman's son. And the wrap up of that passage, the summary of that passage, it says, and he himself and his whole household believed. So in the first one, the disciples believed as a result of Jesus turning the water into wine. The nobleman's son was healed. The nobleman observed this. His household observed this. And if you'll recall, Jesus didn't come. He just spoke. And when he spoke, the servant said, okay, the son was healed. And so when they met on the road and had that conversation, the man believed, and then it says he and his whole household believed. So we see that second development of belief. And then the third one is the healing of the infirm man. And he believed because he obeyed. When Jesus said, take up your pallet and walk, he did that. So you see evidence of belief in his action. And you'll recall in talking about believing that we've talked about it is always a verb in the Gospel of John. There's no noun, sit back and observe anything. It's doing something. So here's your definition in true picture. He believed because he actually did what Jesus told him to do. So he believed, so he obeyed. Okay, so we're ready to look at number 4. The feeding of the 5,000. I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Ed here, and let's jump in to today's passages.
Well, this is this is the 4th of the 7 miracles that we're going to be looking at, and the feeding of the 5,000. So number 4 and number 5, the next one they're going to be looking at. These are the only 2 in the book of John that you can find in the other Gospels. And so when I was reading these 2, I kind of compared them and picked up a few more details that you're not going to see in the book of John. But this is a super familiar miracle that we've probably all heard, oh gosh, hundreds of times would be my guess. Mm-hmm. And I wish, just like all the other ones, I wish we had a lot more time to kind of walk through these, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here. But you know the story. Jesus and his disciples are, Jesus is out teaching and his disciples are following along with him. And all these people show up, and they come from several different places, but they all show up, and they're there for a couple of reasons. Some of them want to hear what Jesus has to say. Some of them really believe that there's something special about Jesus. Some of them are just curious because they're hearing things and they want to see him do signs. And so, they're following him for a couple of different reasons, but they, Jesus finishes his time of teaching, and the disciples look at him and they say, Jesus, it's getting kind of late. We need to send all these people home. And the Bible even says it's kind of getting close to evening. And Jesus says, "No, we're gonna keep them here, and we're gonna feed them." And so I think it's really kind of neat because you see Jesus's compassion, whereas I would have wanted to send them on their way. Jesus keeps them there, and he performs this incredible miracle. And one of the things that I find interesting is he asks Philip, how are we going to do this?
Oh.
Philip says, essentially, he says we can't. But I find it interesting that he asks him because he already knows the answer before he asks. He's just, it even says he's testing Philip. But he takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he breaks it. And I think this is one of the parallels I see in this miracle with the water and the wine is what Jesus does with what he has ends up being better than the initial, the initial circumstance. And so he takes this and he breaks this bread and the fish and passes it out. And the Bible says that because Philip or Andrew said, or Philip said, if we had 200 denarii, which is the equivalent of about 8 months worth of pay, if we had 200 denarii, we wouldn't have enough to give everybody even just a little bit. Jesus, when he's done with his miracle, everybody has enough to be full, completely satisfied, and then there's a lot left over. So the disciples pick up what's left, enough to fill 12 big baskets full.
Yeah. Why do you think he was testing Philip?
Well, in the very first miracle, we see that it says that the disciples believed, and so I think that obviously Jesus knows where Philip is, what Philip believes, and what Philip knows. So Jesus knows that kind of stuff. I think that it's just like when he tests us. He knows where we are. God knows where we are. But a lot of times it's to help us realize and to see, and maybe Philip, the answer that Philip gave him, then when he came back and he saw what Jesus did, I believe probably a realization set in that, man, I still got a long way to go. This guy's a lot more than I even realized.
Yeah. Well, Philip answered from an earthly perspective, from a practical perspective.
Yeah.
This is what's possible in the earthly realm.
That's right.
Jesus is thinking this is what's possible in the heavenly realm.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So he challenges Philip to think beyond earthly, and think with faith.
Mm-hmm.
Think with active belief.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I know, there've been times in my life where I've probably answered very similarly, and then you look back on and I'm thinking,
oh, yeah.
Man, my mind was just way too small for what God had in store.
Oh yeah.
Kind of following along with the verses that I had it highlighted, and I don't know where it is now, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time looking for it. But anyway, the verse that talks about the belief, the people saw and the people believed, and the people wanted to make Jesus their king, and Jesus kind of retreated. And I love that too. And I'm not trying to take too much time on this one. I love that because what we see there is that Jesus has a very clear mission, and he's not going to let the whims of people interfere with his mission, this mission that God had sent him on. But the people saw what he did, and they believed because they saw him perform this incredible miracle.
Absolutely. And the summary statement there in verse 14, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, "This is truly the prophet who has come into the world." So because they saw, they believed.
That's right.
Now the disciples believed because they participated in the handing out of and collecting back of those extra 12 baskets full. But they recognize who Jesus is.
Yeah.
In the midst of this. So that's where the belief comes in. Any other perspective there, Pastor Ed?
I'm gonna have to stop, or I'm just gonna keep on going.
Okay.
Yes,
I understand. Well, let's go from feeding the 5,000 to walking on water. In the next part of chapter 6, actually. verse 15 kind of is a transitional verse there. It says, therefore, when Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. They realized, hey, this is the prophet. This is who God said's coming. So let's make him king. And he took off to the mountain. Now, when the evening came, his disciples went down to the sea to get in the boat and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. Can't even read here. Then the sea rose because a great wind was blowing. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, it is I. Do not be afraid. Then they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. I always wondered about that part of that passage. Immediately.
Right. That's right.
Immediately. The boat was there at the land where they were going. But you see in that one, and without spending a lot of time here, then they willingly received him into the boat. I think there's your belief.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this coming walking on the water towards us? They were afraid. But when he said it's me, it's Jesus, it's me. Don't be afraid.
That's right.
They received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. Maybe we need to look up on that one and spend a little more time there later on that. But Jesus came walking on the water. It's, again, a demonstration. All right, who believed in this story? Who was it who believed in this story? We're back to the disciples, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're back to the disciples.
And you see if in one of the other gospels, it talks about Peter. Peter even stepped out onto the water.
Yeah.
And he believed. Now, of course, he had, he was looking at Christ, and then he got afraid of all the other stuff, and he kind of got tunnel vision on the storm and the waves and that kind of stuff. But Peter believed. I was just an observation I was making that, typically when we have Christ in front of us and fear on either side, isn't it interesting that most of the time our tunnel vision turns towards our fear and not towards the Lord? And that's what Peter had done. But yeah, he saw Jesus, and I can't imagine stepping out of that boat onto that water, but that's what he did.
Yeah. Fear or faith.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to where we are today.
That's right. Yeah.
Are we going to live in faith, or are we going to live in fear? And the world is driving fear like crazy right now, wanting us to be afraid, wanting us to be fearful, wanting us not to trust.
That's right. Yet
we keep our eyes on Jesus, and we trust him. We believe in him. When they were afraid, he said, it is I. He spoke. He spoke. He said, it is I. Do not be afraid. And then they willingly received him. Hey, Jesus, come on in here.
Yeah. I wondered, like, when he said that, when they were afraid and he said, it's I just wonder what was going on in their minds and their hearts. If that fear at that moment, because Jesus spoke, just kind of went away.
Yeah. You could imagine.
Yeah.
In another passage where he speaks to the water and says, peace be still, and it just settles.
That's right.
In this case, maybe that peace in their hearts settled. And I've talked to several folks lately who say, I just need that peace. I just want that peace. Listen to Jesus. Listen to his words.
That's right.
It is I. Do not be afraid. And then willingly receive him into your circumstance. They received him into the boat.
Yep.
That was their circumstance at the moment. They received him. And then it says immediately the boat was to the land where they were going. They didn't have to strive through the rest of the storm, if you will. They went straight to where they were supposed to be.
Right.
Because they trusted, because they believed. Okay, the next part of this chapter goes into the I am the bread of life section, and we'll be talking about those later when we get to the I am statements, which will be in a few weeks. So we're actually going over to John chapter 9, if you will, and this is the long one. So I'm going to let Pastor Ed take care of it. He's been studying on it, and they did this one in youth in this yesterday, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk to us about the blind man.
So I'll try to make this as quick as I can. This story here takes up pretty much the whole chapter of chapter 9. It's a great story. This guy was blind since birth, and people knew it. I mean, they'd seen this guy around, and Jesus comes and he chooses a very odd way to heal this man. He could have done it any way he wanted to, but he chose to spit in the dirt, mix the dirt up, make some mud, put it on the guy's eyes, and he said, "I want you to go and bathe in the pool of Siloam." And so the guy did that, and I think that you see belief there. That the guy did that. One of our kids asked last night, and I thought this was a very insightful question. What if he had gone somewhere else and bathed? Would it have worked? Isn't that a good question? And so we were able to draw a parallel there between the way the guy received sight and the way we have to receive salvation. We've got to do it God's way. But anyway, so the guy goes and he does it, and he comes back and he sees, and immediately the people take him before the Pharisees. Jesus had already kind of moved away at that point, and they take him to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees start questioning him. Who is this guy? He's just a sinner. He's obviously not God. Only God could do something like this. Quit lying to us. I mean, they're just really giving this guy the third degree. They even ask his parents, was this man really blind since birth, and how did he receive his sight? And this is interesting. The parents were afraid of what the Pharisees would do, so they throw it back on the blind man. They said, no, you ask him. I know he's our son, but he's of legal age, so you ask him. That way, if anybody gets in trouble, it's him, not us.
Throw him under the bus. Right.
That's right. And so they do that.
Thanks,
and
Mom and Dad.
they go back to asking him, and he gives an incredible response to them. And I'll just read that real quick. Here's what he says in verse 30. He says, "This is an amazing thing," the man told them. "You don't know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes." It was like he was saying, y'all are the religious leaders, and you don't know anything about this guy, yet he still did this. So you don't know everything you think you know. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he listens to him. Throughout history, no one has ever heard of someone opening the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything. That's what this guy told the Pharisees.
Wow.
And the Pharisees were very offended by it. They said, "You're just a sinner. Why are you teaching us? How dare you?" Then after that, they threw the guy out of the synagogue. They got so mad. Jesus shows back up, finds the guy, and says, "Hey, do you believe in the Son of Man?" And the guy looks at Jesus and he says, "Well, if you tell me who the Son of Man is, I will believe." And Jesus pretty much says, "You're looking at him." And the guy responds, "Lord, I believe." And he falls down and he begins to worship him. An incredible story. Jesus turns and starts talking to the Pharisees and pretty much puts them in their place, and tells them that you think you see, but you don't. This man was blind. He knew he couldn't see, and he's kind of relating that to our sinfulness. You know, if we realize that we're walking in spiritual blindness, then we're in a place where we're crying out to the Lord and God will forgive us. But if we think we're self-righteous, then we're holding on to our sin, and really we're the ones who are blind, and we're going to remain blind. So it's a really incredible story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see the statement in verse 11. When they questioned him, he said, "A man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said, 'Go to the pool of Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed. I received sight." There again, his action indicated his belief.
That's right.
More than that, and I don't have that on the screen, but Pastor Ed just referred to verses 30 through 33. Why this is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he came from, yet that he opened my eyes. Look at the faith in that.
That's right.
To stand against the Pharisees, to stand against the religious leaders, and to proclaim what Jesus did. Now that's an active faith. That is an active believing, because he was willing to take a stand for his faith, for Jesus Christ, and what he had done for him against those who were supposed to know better.
That's right.
So, yeah. What a great story. Anything else there, Pastor Ed? We could go on. We could stay on that one a while, can't we?
Yeah, well, I think we probably need to move on.
Okay.
Again, same thing. We could stay here for a while, but
Yeah. Okay. Moving over to chapter 11, and this is again is a familiar story to us. Chapter 11, verse 1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Hey, Jesus, you love Lazarus, and he is sick. Mm-hmm. When Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Think about that. The sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, and the Son of God may be glorified through it. Mary and Martha saw their brother as sick. Jesus saw it as a means of glorifying God. Now, Jesus loved Martha and his sister and Lazarus, and we know that from this passage and from others because he spent time in their home regularly. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let's go to Judea again. He stayed where he was. It was not his time.
That's right.
Go back to his question to Mary in the first miracle. Woman, why are you asking me to do this? My time has not yet come. So we reminded often, Jesus' timing is better than our timing.
Yeah.
We want it done today. We want it done right now. We live in an instant society. Stick it in the microwave and have it in 30 seconds, and that takes too long. You know, we plug the Keurig in and make a cup of coffee because it's faster than making a pot of coffee. And, you know, and that's too long. We have to wait on it to heat, you know.
Yep.
We live in an instant society. Yet Jesus said, it's not time yet. Hang in here. Wait with me. He stayed 2 more days. Then he said to his disciples in verse 7, let's go to Judea. And the disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you. Are you going there again? And Jesus said, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. These things he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees who? The light of the world.
That's right.
But if he walks in the night, if he walks in the darkness, he stumbles because there is no light. So he's going back to Judea because Mary and Martha and Lazarus need him. He's not really worried at this point about the Jews. He's going to take care of Lazarus. Then his disciples have said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus was talking about his death.
Yeah.
But they thought he was talking about him just taking a rest and sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is, sometimes we don't get it, right?
Yeah.
Jesus said, look at, Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there. Why? Oh, look at this. Underline this in your Bible. That you may believe.
That's right.
They're still working on that earthly plane. He's sleeping. He'll wake up. He'll be fine. Jesus said, no, wait a minute. Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad he is, and glad I wasn't there to wake him up, to heal him beforehand, because now you may believe. Nevertheless, let's go to him. Then Thomas, who is the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's all go, that we may die with him. Okay, Jesus is going back to Jerusalem. He's going to get killed. We might as well all go, right? So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb. Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Mary and Martha to comfort them concerning their brother. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now, I love Martha's personality here. She's the go-getter. She's the get-it-done person. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, there's a faith in that. There is a faith in that. Lord, if you had been here, he would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. So Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha said, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. There again, she's still thinking on that earthly plane. I know when the last day comes. I know we've been taught that he will rise again in that last day. And Jesus said to her, no, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And Martha said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. What a statement of faith.
Yeah.
What a statement of faith. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. She's already said, Lord, if you had been here, he would not have died. Yes, I believe you're the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. And when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, the teacher has come and is calling for you. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come into the town, but he was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out, they followed her, saying, she's going to the tomb to weep there. I think we can see here probably, again, the difference in the two personalities. Mary was grieving, sobbing, crying, hurting. Martha was grieving, but she was more angry, more frustrated, more intense, more reactive. Jesus, if you had been here. Mary's just crying at this point. But then when Martha comes and says, hey, Mary, Jesus is calling for you. Verse 32, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet. And she said basically the same thing that Martha had said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? They said to Jesus, Lord, come and see. And of course, we know this is the shortest verse in the Bible, but look at what it says. Look at how powerful it is. Jesus wept. He saw her weeping. He saw Martha weeping. He saw the Jews who came with her weeping. It says he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And so he asked, where have you laid him? And she said, Lord, come and see. So as they walked together to the tomb, Jesus wept with them. Then the Jews said, see how he loved Lazarus. And some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? See, they're still not to the point of what's about to happen.
That's right. Yeah.
He could have done this had he been here earlier. Then Jesus, again groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and the stone lay around it, against it. And Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there's such a stench, for he's been dead 4 days. Jesus said, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Martha, pay attention. Did I not say to you that if you would believe, you'd see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me.
Right.
Now, when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to him, loose him and let him go. So we see belief all through that passage.
Right.
All through that passage. And then you see in verse 45, it says, then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen these things that Jesus did, what they do? They believed in him. So these people standing around that tomb, Mary and Martha included, I can imagine Lazarus feeling at that moment, but these people saw what Jesus did. They'd seen water turn to wine. They'd seen healing the blind man. They'd seen 5,000 plus fed. They'd seen all of this. They had not seen a dead man raised.
That's right.
So in verse 45, it says, many of the Jews who had come to Mary had seen the things that Jesus did and believed in him. So here's the question, looking at those 7 signs, looking at those miracles, why did John put them in? What is the purpose of John's inclusion of these 7 miracles or signs in his gospel? Why did he put them in the way he put them in? And you'll find it up on the top right-hand corner of your chart, if I remember correctly. That we may what? That we may believe. John has built a powerful apologetic in these 7 stories, in these 7 pictures of what Jesus did. And in each of those instances, it is that we might believe. We saw the disciples believe. We saw the nobleman and his whole household believe. We saw the infirm man take up his bed and walk. He believed because of his action. We saw I'm doing this from memory. I don't have anything in front of me. The feeding of the 5,000. There again, the disciples believed. A lot of other people believed too. But we see again the disciples believe. And we see it come on down through these 7 stories. And the disciples are there for all of them.
Right. So
we come back to that we might believe. Any final words, Pastor Ed?
I mean, 20:31, again, 30 and 31 is it. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah,
Absolutely.
the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. I've been telling our teenagers over and over and over again, and it's not just in the book of John. This translates into our lives as well. All the things that Christ does in our lives are for our benefit, but the greater purpose is that they're for the glory of God, so that people will see and believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. It's been a little longer session today. We wanted to finish these up and kind of wrap it up. If you have questions, if you have comments, observations, anything you want to dialogue with us about, let me unshare the screen so we can. You might want to see that better than us. But woodlawnconover@gmail.com. Send us your notes, observations, and we'll talk more about those week by week. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. Pastor Ed, thank you for joining us as well. God bless you. You have a great week as you look in the book.
That's right.
I just see Jesus. I tell you, he's alive. I just